Hey everybody, I wanted to make a video about this new software I've been testing called Mulligan. It's made by Refuse Software. I kind of stumbled upon it. I saw an ad, I think, on one of the emails or blogs or something, and somehow their ad caught my attention. I was like, ProTools plugin controller, what's going on? I gotta try it. This is a great link between almost any MIDI controller that has knobs and buttons and faders and Pro Tools plugins. So I recently ordered um, uh, X-Touch Mini by Behringer. Uh, it's a great little controller. I have it here, and I'll show you how I'm using it with Mulligan. Uh, One thing that happens when you install Mulligan, they make it clear that Mulligan will create a virtual device in your audio MIDI setup. You're going to have to check your peripherals, right? And in the MIDI controllers, this is important. You're going to have to set the controller for an M audio keyboard and receive and send to Mulligan on 8 channels, right? So here it's kind of like a virtual driver that was installed, right? I have my other drivers that are already in here, but Mulligan get installed, right? So you have to make sure that you launch Mulligan, it looks like this, before you launch Pro Tools. In Mulligan, as you can see here, I also have the choice of the devices I want to use. So here I'm using my X-Touch Mini. And you can assign knobs and also buttons to different parameters in Mulligan, right? And you can save those as your user data, right? They have something called the HUD. I forget what it stands for, but it's pretty useful. It's going to be a little panel that appears on top of your Pro Tools window at the bottom, and it shows your parameters, your knobs. Mostly you want to use knobs here. And it's going to show the value and what that value stands for in your plugins, right? So as you can see here, when I turn a knob, this is the HUD that appears. You see, you can set the level of opacity here, right? So if I show it here, I can make it very dark. Let's make it very dark so it's very clear. And you can see the display time. So it will disappear after 6 or 5 seconds or 4 seconds, right? So I take a knob. As you can see on the left here, right now, when I turn one of my knobs, right, I can see that little red point that shows me that I'm moving the knob, and at the bottom I see a value depending on the plugin, right? If I grab my second knob, right, it turns with it. Let's talk about the X-Touch Mini for a second here. As you can see, there are 8 knobs. Now, these knobs are not the knob caps, are not the standard knob caps. The standard knob caps are the black ones you see here. I happen to have some knob caps by a company. What are they called? I forget the name of the company right this second. But anyway, what I really like about those knob caps is that I replace them, right? And what I thought would be fun, what I like is that they're more gummy, so they're more grippy, right, than the ones that come with the X-Touch. And I thought to myself, well, also here, I might change the colors a bit. What I wanted to do is alternate the knob. So I have like a grippy knob here, a regular one, a grippy, a regular, a grippy, a regular. So it's kind of easier for me when I'm touching and not even looking. I feel I have a different touch, right? Different feel. So I know I'm on a grippy or a more slick knob, and I might assign them to kind of similar functions. And actually, I will tell you right now. For example, I will assign in an equalizer that would have gain and frequency, for example, on 4 bands, I would assign gain, frequency, gain, frequency, gain, frequency, gain, frequency, like that. Now, one thing that I think is really useful about Mulligan and the knobs also is you're trying to speed up your workflow. You're kind of like, I don't really want to use the mouse to go move the knob on a plugin. You want to grab a knob, right? The beauty of analog recording consoles and analog gear is that we have knobs that are always at the same location. So we can acquire what you would call almost muscle memory, right? You want to grab the top end of your EQ, you know where it is. It's like your arm reaches for that knob, right? And it doesn't change. So right now I've been playing with Mulligan and the X-Touch. I've been trying to apply that a bit to my plugins. For example, if I'm playing with compressors, one of the settings that I will maybe want to play with a lot would be the threshold. The idea would be like maybe on all my compressors, because I can program what's called a custom map for the knobs, I will make my first knob always the threshold. So this way I go to my compressor, I know that if I want to grab the threshold, I can have almost a muscle memory. Same thing I was describing with my EQs, right? The horizontal layout of EQs. On the left, we have the low frequency, usually on the right, the high frequencies. If I know that the first knob might be always my low frequency gain, in a way. So I can set that up myself the way I want. The great thing is like the plugin parameters will also show up automatically in Mulligan, right? It's just like you might want to customize them, as I said, to create kind of like that muscle memory and that fast reach of like, oh, I know my threshold is always here and my gain, for example, is always on the right. So I'm like, oh, I want to play threshold on any of my compressor. I go here. I want to play with the gain. I go there. So let's take a look a bit at the interface of Mulligan. Here I have assigned all my knobs, my 8 knobs, to knob 1, knob 2, knob 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, right? Now I have also buttons here that I can assign. So I assign the button previous page and next page to those 2 buttons here on the right, 7 and 8, right? This inside of a plugin will go to different pages. If the plugin has a lot of parameters, I can switch between pages here, right? Now, on the left, I also have plugin navigation, and this is pretty great. With this knob on top, right, I have next plugin. So let me show you how this works. Right, let's go to Pro Tools. I created 3 tracks here to show you a bit how it works. Right, I have one track with like mostly equalizers, second track with compressor, the third tracks with reverb. So if I click on my first plugin, the API, right, and I click on this button, it's automatically going to go to my next plugin slot. And then I go to the next, I go to the next, right? And then it's going to cycle. So it's like a cycle between the plugins on that track. Now, if I switch back to Mulligan, you can see that we have track navigation here, right? So I can close also those little things here. Track navigation, I put them on those 2 knobs, previous track, next track. So if I go back to Pro Tools, you'll see that now, when I press next track, I went to the next track on the same insert slot. Next track, right? And now previous track here, right? So we have a cycle between plugins on the same track. And here I can go also to the next track and I can cycle between my plugins, between my compressor, right? Here I can go back to my previous track and I can cycle. This is just for demonstration purposes, right? Between my plugins. Now the button below here, I forget where it is. It's hide the plugin, or you know what I mean, or close the plugin, show hide. So I put it at the bottom left. That's show hide my plugin. Very useful, right? Now, one thing I wish we had, and that I haven't found, I think in Mulligan, is the plugin bypass. Now, I made myself some other system that I explained in another video, but there's no plugin bypass. I kind of wish we had that function. That'd be very useful to have. Let's take a look at the other functions we have. Solo, mute, and level, right? So the level is actually on my little fader. Now what I did is, you see that I have the transport function lead up. So above this, I did solo, and then to the left, I did mute, right? So let's see if it works. I'm on my track 1. If I press this button, I solo my track 1. If I press this button, I mute my track 1. And here, this is very cute, but it feels pretty good actually on that Behringer. I have a little fader here for my volume for the track, right? So this is pretty cool. This is not necessarily what I would use all the time, but for the price here, I got a little fader here. Not that bad. Nothing to complain about here. All right. Now, on this controller, I haven't mapped the aux sends because I'm out of knobs, right? And I want to use those knobs for my plugins more than my aux sends. But you see that you could map your aux sends to a MIDI controller or your pan, right? Or a pan combo. I'm not using that, right? Let me see the knobs. I'm going to close this, right? Master fader, I'm not doing that. Show hide the HUD. Oh, actually, I thought I had done that. I'm going to map it. So to map it, you click on it, right? And you select the button you want to use. And that's it. Now it's mapped, right? Now, I'm going to close this, right? And now we have the transport. So I happen to have a transport buttons on this X-Touch. So I just mapped my rewind, fast forward, loop mode. This is pretty cool. The stop, the play, and the record, right? So let's see if that works, right? I'm going to go to Pro Tools, close my plugin here. Let's go to the edit window. If I press play, you can see that the transport start to play. Stop works. Rewind, right? Fast forward. I can change the loop mode here. So it's the loop on, loop off, right? And I can press record, right? So here, for example, this is kind of cool. If my track, let's say I arm track 3, I can use my record button here to punch in, punch out. So I press play, I punch in, or I punch out. Now I punch in, you see, and I punch out. So I have like a dedicated record button that, once again, that's a thing that doesn't really hurt me here. I like to use F12 on my Pro Tools, but whatever. Now I have also a record button, right? Let's disarm that recording. Okay, let's go to the main event here. Let's look at that API plugin here. So you'll see at the bottom, so when I open my plugin, if I touch a control, you see that I'm going to now play with my low gain for this EQ, right? And on the left, you can notice that it says low gain and the value, right? Now, this is the feel of it is going to change depending on the plugin. This plugin emulates a knob that has some fixed points, right? So for me to go between 0 and +2, I do have on the X-Touch to turn, you know, a couple of clicks. It's not just one click like what I see on the screen, right? But still, it's pretty cool. I have access to the low gain and the frequency, right? And then mid gain, mid frequency here, right? So for your knob to start activating, you sometimes have to go catch, because I'm using what's called the absolute mode. So you have to go catch the knob in the position where it is originally when you open the plugin. But you can see here, I have kind of dedicated control for those frequencies, and on all the way to the right, I set up my last knob for my output, right? So pretty useful for an EQ when I want to compensate for what I'm doing in terms of gain here, right? So that's my API control, right? So now if I switch to my next plugin, right? Remember, I can switch here. Here's a tube take. Now I programmed the boost here, the frequency select, the attenuation on the low frequency. So you can see I can turn two things at the same time. Actually, if I grab, I could grab several knobs at the same time if I use my pinky or something, and I can turn 4 knobs at the same time, and it all works, right? So I hope that kind of makes sense. So now, when I program, right, I'm going to go to my NACQ, which is a Focusrite here, an old D2. I really like that plugin. Once again, here, I try to stay kind of consistent in the programming that plugin map. This is my low frequency gain, and this is my low frequency selection. So my black knobs here are the frequencies, right? And my gummy knobs here are the gains, right? So I can kind of quickly go dial up, right? Now I left out for my mouse or my trackball the Q, right? So here I also made a preset, my T-Bass preset with a high Q, for example, because I know that I would use this plugin to remove like frequencies that I don't really like. So right away here, I have like a high Q, so I know I want to pinpoint a frequency, right? Play with it, and then I can say, okay, I want to tame it down, right? Hopefully you get the idea. Now let's go back to the user default, you see. So here I can be like, okay, gain, it's a very pointy EQ, and I can sweep, right? And then say, okay, oh, that's the one I don't really like. Let's tame it. Oh, that's the one I like. Let's boost it. And then if I now want to adjust my Q, for this, I adjust the mouse. Now, I was telling you about the pages, right? So you see I can go between parameter pages, and now I have the original pre-programmed version of those knobs, right? And they get highlighted, right? And I could grab another parameter if I want. But you could see it as like the first page is like you set your own macro, right? So how do we set it? I mean, here's another example before I show you how you set it of my NSEQ2, all my gains, right? And my 4 bands of frequency. This is all my gains on my gummy knobs, right? So I can quickly do the gain. And here, these are all my frequencies on those knobs, right? So after a while, you can be like, I'm really used to this. So let me show you how we program a custom map, right? Let's go here, maybe let me see if there's a plugin I don't have a map for. Let's take the API 560. I don't think I programmed a map for this. Now you can see that already here, I already have the bands 31, 63. So for this one, it's kind of silly maybe because it's already there, right? But I could say, you know what? I want my own map for this. So where do we find our maps? It's called here, factory default map, right? And by the way, this is something that surprised me. I forgot, I've been a Pro Tools user for many years, but I forgot that you could map, you could learn, right? Now, that learn function here actually was not available to me until I went to the peripherals and enabled the controller. So for the longest time, I kind of forgot that this was available in Pro Tools. I remember it was available in Logic. It's pretty easy to use in Logic. I forgot it was there until I found Mulligan again, and I was like, oh, let's try this thing with it. Anyway, it's great. It's that completely intuitive, but let's reset our EQ to default here. So let's say I want to create my own map. I'm going to create a new map here, custom map 1. Now, this is in learn mode. So in theory, it doesn't work for every plugin smoothly. In theory, I can just click on a parameter I want to learn, and then I turn the knob on my X-Touch to the left. So let's say, you remember I was saying, maybe the last parameter on the right, button number 8, knob number 8, sorry, I want that to be the output level. So I click on output, I turn knob 8, and nothing happened. You see, this is a good example. No control got selected. So on this one, somehow it's not catching. On some plugin it catches. I'm not quite sure why. But here I have access to the parameters here. So I can select it here, output, and now there you go. I have assigned my knob 8 to output. You see it on the HUD here. Now if I say, you know what, I want to start on the left. I don't want to start at 31 Hertz, but I want to start at 63 Hertz. I'm going to select band 63 Hertz and turn my first knob. And let's say I want to skip and I want to go to 250 here for my second knob. Well, I select 250, second knob is assigned. Let's say I want to skip 500. I want to go to 1K on the third knob. There you go. I just turn the knob. It's assigned to 1K. Now here, maybe I won't skip anymore. So I'm going to go 2K, next knob. I'm going to go 4K, next knob. I'm going to go 8K, next knob. And I have one knob left, I think, here, right? 16K. There you go. I have assigned those. Now, I want to save that map. So I've been saving my map as Mulligan. And I want to go and say set as default, right? So normally when I open this plugin, my map by default will be this. I can close this, right? Now that it's learned, let's open it. There you go. I have my 63 Hertz, 250 Hertz. Now, you'll notice that when I start turning the knob, right? At the bottom, you see that, let's go to knob number 4 here. My knob is where the little gray little line is here. So that's where it's kind of last in position. Now to make the knob active in the plugin, I have to cross it to the red band. So let's see on knob 5 here. You see, I have to kind of turn a bit to make it, to catch it, and then it starts turning, right? But this is, now I have my output, right? Now I can, very easily go play with that EQ like that. So let's do another one, right? Let's say I'm going to try, what could I try to map? Let's map a compressor, right? Something simple, a DBX160. I don't know if I mapped it. So here you see there's a default map already, right? My default map is here. Now, my default map starts with an input level here, right? You see, it's not necessarily what I want to play with right away. What I might want to play with is more like the threshold, right? So once again, this is like, what do I want to set it on a compressor? Maybe right away I want to grab my threshold and my ratio, right? Really quick. So let's create a new map, right? We're in learn mode. I'm going to click on threshold, and that doesn't work again. So let me try here. Threshold. And now it's assigned. Let's grab the, where is it? Compression, I guess left. There you go. And then all the way to the right, you remember I'm like my output gain. Let's go to, where is it? Output left. right? I'm on a stereo thing. Up, assign it to the right, right? And it's stereo. Let me see, can I collapse this? All right, so save as, Mulligan. There you go. Don't remember to make it default, right? Turn off the learn mode. Let's close that and reopen it again. There you go. My threshold, my ratio, and my gain here, right? So really quickly, I have those settings there. So you see that it's very easy to program, and I have compressors here that I put earlier. On the first knob is my threshold, ratio. Then I have, my attack release here, my gain all the way to the right. If I go to my next plugin here, right? This is my tube take. Boom, left is threshold. Second one is my ratio. I have my attack, my release, right? All the way to the right is my output volume. And before that, I have my parallel compression between dry and wet, right? So you see, hopefully, maybe you don't agree that's the way to set it up, but this way, I know that is always my threshold, the first knob, right? Next compressor, here it's the gain and the gain reduction, right? On this, on the great TLA 100 here. If I go to my classic CLA compressor, it's my input output here, my attack release, my ratio is somewhere here, right? I can change my ratio, and I can change the type between blue and black, right? So, and then what else do I have? Oh, that was the API we programmed, right? So I think it's very useful for reverbs, right? Same kind of thing. Yeah, you have to think, what is the first thing I want to play with on my reverb? For me, I will play with my decay and my pre-delay. All right, so I program my decay to be the first knob, my pre-delay, and then usually I will play with the filter, right? And maybe at the end, the mix or the gain or something. But here, you see, I have access to my filters here, right? And maybe the mix here, and also the position, right? The distance of the microphones here, right? So if I switch to my deverb, which is the next plugin I have, here I don't have a default map. I do have a default map. I didn't program a custom map. So you see here I have my input gain, right? My wet dry. That's not quite what I would play with, right away. So let me go back to my user default here, right? Let's create a quick map for this that would be more, in touch with what I want to play with in a reverb. So the decay, you see, this one works. There you go. That's my decay, my pre-delay, maybe my high frequency cut here, maybe my low frequency cut here. Why not? My diffusion, right? And then maybe I can change the algorithm here with this one. And then what do I have? The size. And then maybe do I have a wet dry? I will do a wet dry here. There you go. Save as, Mulligan. Right? Set as default. Right? And now I'm ready. Let's try it again. Open my reverb. Up, my decay here. I can change the type of reverb that I want. Right? Play it. I can change my decay, my pre-delay. I have my pass filter, my low pass filter, my diffusion here, my wet dry here. Right? So you see, this is, I think, very useful. If I switch to my next plugin, up, my decay is here, my pre-delay is here. I have my size and attack here. I think I have my type of reverb here, my mode. I have my color mode, vintage, modern, right? And here I have some EQ, high and low cut. I didn't program everything. I can also go, use the mouse, right? But to me, the beauty is this. I can just grab the first knob to play with my decay. If I go to my next reverb, same thing. First knob is my decay, second knob is my pre-delay. So you can kind of say, well, I want to put them the way they appear on screen, or you could put them of like, I always want my decay to be my first knob, regardless of where it appears on screen, right? So if I go here, I have it the way it looks on screen. So I have my release time here, my low frequency, high frequency, pre-delay, mix here, and here I can switch. The last one is switching between the algorithms, right? Plate, hall, ambience, room. All right. So once again, Mulligan and the little Behringer X-Touch, a great combination. I wish the knobs felt a bit better on the Behringer. For the price, I think it's a great little controller. And Mulligan also is a very good price for what it enables you to do. It's easy to use, pretty easy to program. And I think if you take a bit of time to think about your your maps, it can speed up your workflow, because then you can kind of create that muscle memory that you have on analog gear, and you can save your own custom maps. I hope this is helpful, and check out the other software from Refuse Software. I'm not affiliated with them. I just think this is pretty great when you use Pro Tools every day.